Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm just going to get started now. So my name is Sunaina Chopra. I am a master's student in the Rehabilitation Science program at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. So today my project is titled Hilht'iz, which means strengthening the bodies from the Carrier Sekani territory in North Central BC. Before starting, I just want to say thank you to IPAC for being involved in this conference for allowing me to speak here today, as well as the Sunaina University for allowing me to be a grateful visitor on their lands and territory. I am a South Asian settler that was born and raised on the Musqueam Scholarship Education that is now Vancouver, BC. And accompanying this land development is a piece of artwork by First Nation artist Roy Henry Vickers. And this specific piece is entitled Horseland. And it is Steve Vickers reminiscence about playing street hockey in the winter time with his younger brother and his winter boots as goalposts. So I feel like that story and the artwork really help us to topic here in this conference as well. So here's a brief overview of what I plan to discuss today. So just starting with some background information and some context before jumping right into the project itself. Going into some survey results maybe that we've collected so far and how that will inform the next phase of the project, which is put a voice in interview, and then end off with some acknowledgements. So as I said, we'll start with some background information. So I know this is really redundant at this stage of the conference, and everybody has a well understanding, but just to ensure we're all on the same page about what we mean by physical activity, it's really any movement that results in your body's skeletal muscles to use energy. And this is different from exercise, where the CDC defines that as a subtype of physical activity that is planned, structured, and repetitive. So as a comparison, examples of physical activity may include gardening or household chores, whereas exercise may include options like sports or weightlifting, for example. And as we know from past research, physical activity in general is really important for your health and well-being. So I've also included those definitions here, but in general, by health, I mean those actions that are made to free the body of disease and illness. So for example, actions made to reduce a person's cholesterol level or blood sugar levels, and wellness meaning to improve your overall quality of life. So as I mentioned, physical activity being a big one, but as well as drinking enough water or just getting enough sleep in a day. And so we know from past research that physical activity is really important for individuals with chronic disease, as Dr. Kim eloquently put it in her presentation. Physical activity can help a lot with people experiencing different chronic disease conditions. So just starting from a preventative perspective first, according to the Public Health Agency of Canada, 4 out of 5 adults who are not meeting the current physical activity guidelines are actually a risk factor for chronic disease conditions. And all of that can be resolved by just being more active. And the same agency found that 90% of youth ages 5 to 17 years old are also not meeting those guidelines as well. Now, just looking through a management perspective now. So 2 examples I included here are first that regular physical activity can decrease exacerbation symptoms. A lot of patients with COPD, so symptoms such as wheezing, coughing, and chest congestion. But as we learned in Dr. Kim's presentation, help those with diabetes, so it can reduce blood A1C levels. So this is really important for these individuals as it can reduce their further diabetic complications such as nerve damage that can lead to amputation, eyesight, as well as kidney damage that can lead to dialysis or other kidney failure. So just changing our perspective now to First Nations in Canada. So looking at the First Nations Regional Health Survey, which was done back in 2018 by the First Nations Governance Center. And this survey was done by nearly 24,000 people in over 250 First Nations communities across the country. They found that among youth, asthma was actually the most reported chronic disease condition among those aged 12 to 17 years old. But other top responses included mood disorders such as depression and anxiety, as well as chronic back pain. And among those with a chronic disease condition, they actually found that those First Nations experiencing chronic disease actually had increased, feelings of disconnection and depression overall. So feelings that they weren't connected to their spirit, mental, or emotional selves. And that really showcases our importance and need to prevent chronic disease among our youth and children. So that they're not feeling such a disconnect in the land to their community. Now we narrow our focus down to the infant site report that was done in 2021. They defined youth as those aged 6 to 17 years old. And again, as the federal findings found that First Nations youth in our province are 1.4 times more likely to have asthma and 1.5 times more likely to have feelings of depression compared to other population members in our province. And looking at children that are aged 0 to 5 years old, they have children also are 2.2 times more likely to have asthma compared to other population groups in our province. And now, looking at all this chronic disease information, how does physical activity fit into all of this? And I get that question a lot. There's many ways to deal with chronic disease. There's education, there's medication, there's diet. Well, if we just listen to what communities are asking for and looking for, like I know this is all redundant at this point, but if we just take a moment and listen to all the calls to action and principles that were made at all governmental levels, we can see how deeply embedded physical activity has been in all of this. So starting at the Hilht'iz, up north in the north central BC area, Carrier Sekani Family Services, a health and wellness organization, represented First Nations communities up there. And they've heard from community members at meetings and advisory meetings in surveys that physical activity is important to them, to their communities. Stepping up to the provincial level, we have the Yizt'iyh, which is the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People Act in our province. And many articles, I believe that this 3 and outlining how important physical activity is. Stepping up to the federal level, as we know, truth and reconciliation calls to action, and there is heard from Carrier Justice presentations, for example, there are at least 5 in there that recognize sport and physical activity as important. And then finally, as we heard this morning from the chiefs, in that under-impacted global level, with the United Nations, that can be really important for all Indigenous communities across the globe, and desperately need our attention. And what's amazing is we can already see some of these drive for better programming in our country. And so, in addition to what we've already heard these last 2 days, I wanted to just mention a handful of ones here. So, starting at the top here with the Growing Young Leaders program in Saskatchewan, abbreviated GYM. So they're an after-school program dedicated to those aged 6 to 10 years old, and they're meant to improve physical activity programming in Saskatchewan. And what better way to do that than by having 16 to 18-year-olds lead those programs, gain that supervisory role and mentorship ability, and that often leads to later employability and leadership opportunities for those people. The next one is in partnership with Hilht'iz. So the Recreation and Parks Association of Niwh holds annual Happy Summer Day Camps. And similar to the GYM program, youth aged 15 to 21 every week undergo supervisory training and different mentorship skills to help facilitate youth groups aged to 10, I believe, as well. Yeah, to help them in their summer day camps for 4 to 6 weeks. Similarly, giving them employability and mentorship skills as well. And I've noticed since 2015, since they started that program, it's been reported that 10,000 children and 500 youth have completed that Get Happy Summer Day Camp, which is amazing. And then finally, the one I wanted to mention at the level is from the Aboriginal Sports Circle. So they have this document that outlines 10 key recommendations as well as other general tips that can help facilitate long-term adherence for youth and children towards activity and sport, which is amazing. So they have a development path about what should be done at various stages and how this can later lead to long-term adherence of sport and physical activity in adulthood. Now to focus down onto our provincial level, we see at the Indigenous Sport, Physical Activity and Recreation Council, abbreviated ISPARC here. They provide funding to communities to facilitate in-community physical activity programs. But in addition to that, they also hold various events and programs throughout the year. One of them being a Words of Wellness program. So here, schools across our province would compete and would earn points based on 6 health behaviors, one of which is physical activity. And the more points they earn, the better they do. And at the end of the month, the top school would win a big banner as grant funding. But grant funding and other prizes are also given to the top 5 schools that participate. Among FNHA and the First Nations Health Authority here, they have a comic book that's called Path of the Warrior, and this is meant to be read by those aged 15 to 21 years old. And while they also have themes of physical activity, they also have themes of gang prevention and community engagement as well, really facilitating the youth to belonging of their community. And this comic book is recommended to be read in informal missionaries or to facilitate conversation and Q&A among youth. And then finally, the one I wanted to mention here is from Carrier Sekani Family Services. So as I mentioned, they're a health and wellness organization in the north central BC area, representing communities up there. And they have a walk tall program, which is dedicated to those 8 to 18 years old. And this is meant to help facilitate and fulfill their educational, cultural, and activities. So they'll hold events like bowling nights, hiking, and various other swimming and land-based activities. And while it's important to recognize how great these initiatives are, and it's amazing that these strides with activities are happening, as Dr. Camp pointed out, they may not be suitable for those with chronic disease, such as those with pain and those with diabetes or other lung conditions, for example, due to their unique experiences and perspective. So what's really important to recognize is how can we create programs that are sustainable and effective for those individuals with chronic disease conditions. So in order to do that, what we need to do first is understand what are the current experiences and preferences being active among those individuals. But when we look at past research about what's been done, we see a lot of gaps and issues with how past research has tried to investigate it. First being is that Indigenous people were not a focus of the study. If they were included in such a study, they tended to only make up a really small fraction of the total. When they were being focused, though, there wasn't an equal distribution of gender, or chronic disease wasn't a focus either. If chronic disease was focused, they tended to narrow it only focus on one, such as only diabetes and arthritis, which again is problematic because communities are so unique and so diverse in their experiences that we need to take the whole spectrum into account. There's one pilot project I think close enough to address some of these disparities. However, the problem with that one was it's limited by a really small society with only 2 communities in the conversation and only 9 individuals. And so it's important to recognize how all of this work is useful in health guide programming. It's really important that we get information that is unique to communities based on their unique goals and perspectives. So now that I've showcased what needs to be done, and now I want to discuss what the objective of the study is. So again, to improve physical activity programming, we're hoping to investigate what the values of facilitators and barriers to physical activities are in rural and remote First Nations communities in the north central area, again focusing on those individuals with chronic disease conditions. And so this is part 1 of 3 of the larger Strengthening Our Bodies project, which overall goal is to develop, implement, and evaluate a physical activity program, again, among those individuals with chronic disease conditions. And I know I mentioned quite a bit, but it's no surprise that this is in partnership with Carrier Sekani Family Services and BC. So how will we get information in this project to put all this information and improve physical activity programming in community? Well, here I'm creating this diagram. I know the yellow and white's a little bit hard to see, but looking at the white bars, this is typically what normal research would account for. They set up a framework, they set up a guideline, they collect data, analyze it, report. That's it. But the problem with that is that it's missing so much more. It's missing the bigger picture that you have a lot behind the scenes work. So starting at the top there, this project and design has been implemented and created in partnership with Carrier Sekani Family Services as well as member nations over many meetings, over many discussions. This has been a community-led idea. They are the ones that have told us that they wanted it structured in such a way that we do surveys, interviews, and then focus groups. Finally, once we set up that framework, we met again with member nations and Carrier Sekani Family Services to create that survey so that we were creating the best questions that were culturally safe and relevant to their communities. And through our attendance at health fairs and community events, we were able to collect all of that. But it's important to recognize how all of this conversation wasn't just at the front end of this project, but also distributed throughout the project. As we progress from survey to interview phase, we've been in contact with community health representatives, as well as other key members of communities such as coordinators to allow us to progress through the stages. And finally, to create this final discussion report that we will for Child Francisco Community Program. Before beginning all of this work, though, there are many ethical procedures and considerations that we take before approaching this work with this grant. So first being that all of this work was approved by the Ethics Board by both UBC and CSFS. The second is abiding by the principles of OPEC. So OPEC stands for ownership, control, access, and possession. And so by abiding by these principles, we're recognizing that the work is the rightful property of the communities and CSFS and not ours. Finally is obtaining informed consent. So by each parent participant that participates in any of the three phases of the study will be obtaining their informed consent and making sure that they understand what is being asked of them. And finally, to respect their anonymity, confidentiality, using codes and pseudonyms to refer to them, just to respect their privacy. And all researchers involved in the study underwent cultural safety training that was done by Carrier Sekani Family Services. And so as I previously mentioned, the first phase of this project is the survey phase. So they'll be the main topic of this conversation here today. So to start with some background information, as I mentioned, this was done collaboratively with members of the Carrier Sekani Family Services team. And so we distributed these paper copies of the survey in person at health fairs and community events. And these surveys took about 10 to 15 minutes for our participants to complete. And for this time and energy being completed, they received a $25 gift card to a gas station, grocery store, the coffee shop of their choosing. And so all of this was done from June last year to February. And so I've tried to include a map if you're unfamiliar with the area. So in yellow there, you can see Highway 16. And here we're at the Cheshwada First Nations Healthcare event in Grassy Plain. So there's Burns Lake about there, it's south over Francois right there, and then we're in more Grassy Plains. There are 6 sections here with survey, so we asked about demographics, started with budget behaviors, barriers to activity, values and goals for our preferences and cultural. And because of the mixed methods design of the survey, we have multiple choice questions, followed by and responses. We inputted all of the survey data into the survey software culture and then analyzed it based on count and frequency. And then further analysis was done with Microsoft Excel. And then similarly, I mentioned right here in the CSFS First Nations Healthcare event in June last year. And so for those unfamiliar, again, Highway 16 there, Xander, who's about there, and south here in the CSFS First Nations area. So I'm going to jump right into the survey results now. So for the purposes of this conference and the theme of this conference is really focusing on youth, I really just wanted to focus on the youth data that has come out of the survey, but I've also included the adults there as a comparison. So from June to February, we collected over 200 survey responses. Among those aged 12 to 24, which I will consider to be youth, we collected 35 survey results. Among those, 40% identified as female, 49% as male, 6% as non-binary, trans-masculine, or different identity. And among those, 89% reported being Indigenous. And you can see the darker blue there for adults in comparison. So among adults, we heard from responses from as 25 to as old as 89 years old, at 166 responses there. Just over 65% identified as female, 34% as male, and 97% there as Indigenous. So in our next section asking about current physical activity behaviors, we asked the first question, how many days per week are you active? And by activity, we define it as making your heart beat faster or your breathing heavier for at least 10 minutes per day. And we use this definition as it's a simple assessment of physical activity levels, as Dr. Camp said, there's many benefits of being active at least 5 minutes a day. And we can see that in literature as well with the heart and stroke activity, 7 benefits to being active at least 10 minutes per day, including improvements in brain health, blood sugar levels, and stress levels. So with that definition in mind, we found that over 86% of our youth were active at least 3 days per week for at least 10 minutes, and very, very similar values in our adult group there, at 82% being active at least 3 days per week for at least 10 minutes. The next question was a textbook response question where we asked, what were some activities they enjoyed doing? And so we can see that depicted here with the larger words depicting the more common response. So as we can see, there's definitely in favor of the term of with the one plant-based activities, such as walking, fishing, hunting, and hiking as well. But we can also see sports such as baseball and hockey also being popular responses. So the next section of our survey asks about barriers to that. So the first question we asked was, do you experience any breathlessness when walking up a slight hill? And this was a multiple choice yes, no question. And we can see that here about 30% of our youth reported saying yes, that they were experiencing breathlessness when walking up a slight hill. But unfortunately, we see that number double in our adult group at 67%. And really showing that some intervention is needed in order to curb that breathlessness with age and hopefully stop that increased breathlessness. Next question asks about physical symptoms our participants experienced when being active. What were some things that stopped them from being physically active? And we can see our youth group depicted here in the light blue, adults in the darker blue, and the percentage of response to that because of the bars there. So starting with our youth group first, again, you see difficulty breathing in the top chosen response, followed by feeling tired, muscle weakness, and then pain. Ultimately, in our adult group there, instead you see that feeling tired is their top chosen response, then followed by difficulty breathing, muscle weakness, and pain. So again, those ideas of breathlessness and difficulty breathing being the top concern our youth are currently facing. The final question in our barriers section asks about what are other things that made activity difficult for our participants. And from this, we can see 2 trends emerge. We can see those being more intrinsic, related to the individual person's experience, such as feeling tired, no motivation, and no time there. But we also saw extrinsic barriers emerge, meaning related to where the person lived, such as whether it's season, no place to exercise, and no time. And again, we've seen similar trends both among our youth group there in the lighter blue and our adult group in the darker blue there. However, despite all of those barriers, as Hilht'iz mentioned, we found that physical activity has value in both our youth and adult group, with 65% of our youth saying physical activity was important to them, and similarly 87% in our adult group. When we asked how interested they were in learning more about the benefits of physical activity within an educational setting, we see similar numbers there within adult group at 85%, which is really important and vital for us to know as it's showing that communities are eager to expand their knowledge about physical activity within an educational setting and interest in learning more about how they can better the health and wellness of their communities. The next question with similarity was a word cloud again, as it was a text box response. So here we asked what were some things our participants wanted to learn or improve on. So you can see our youth group there on the left and our adult group there on the right. So starting with our youth group, we see a lot of preference for sport, for example. So we could see hockey, baseball, basketball, and volleyball being the top chosen responses. Interestingly, when we look at our adult group there, instead we see a lot of preference lies in cultural activities such as drumming, traditional dance, yoga, and a lesser extent to sports. And all of this being really interesting in how we structure program. Among youth, if we just go back here, extensive barriers, we can see that no equipment and no police exercise were top areas our youth experienced. And knowing that they are interested in sport really allows us to take that future program and address those barriers that they have. The next particular survey looked at program preferences to a future program. So starting with equipment and infrastructure first, we can see their equipment preferences seen there on the left in the pie chart. So we can see a lot of preference to a treadmill, bike, and dumbbells among our youth. On the right there, we can see that the top infrastructure they prefer to see in the community was a walking path or track. And all of this being no surprise given that in our first question, walking was the top activity they enjoyed doing. So we can really see how they want to facilitate more walking in the community. Continuing with program preferences, I have the youth group here again in light blue and adults in darker blue. Just to help the patient shorts down to seasonal preferences, we can see that there's not too much of a difference when we ask about outdoor winter activities such as snowshoeing and skiing. Both of our youth and adult group, 70% of them are not interested. However, when we ask about outdoor summer activities such as prairie picking and walking and hunting, we can see that there was much bigger preference for those activities, with those numbers jumping to the 8s. Going back up there to the group programs and scheduled and instructional classes, we can see that among these group they weren't as interested as their adult group was. Showing that only 68% of our youth were interested in group activities and about the same number in scheduled instructional, but far more adults were interested in group and scheduled instructional classes. Again, all of this information can be very vital to us as we plan and structure those future programs. The final question of the survey asked about cultural preferences to an activity. So the first question asks, how interested would you be in adding culture to a physical activity program? And we can see that over 3/4 of our youth were interested. And one way that looks like is to be seen here on the left of a house making event that was held in Niwh First Nation this past February. So my team and I were very grateful to be up there around that time, and there was a lot of buzz in the community about this event being held and really understanding, what types of events can create this fun and exciting is really important for us to help facilitate more of them. So that's one example of how adding culture can be useful. The next question asks about how interested participants were in learning about the history of this activity within their community. And again, we've heard presentations like that today, and you can see that over 80% of our participants learn and gain that educational benefit. And one example of what that may look like can be seen here of the Psychic Center that we took last June. So while we were up there in June, we got to hear a beautiful story from one of the elders about the naming of the Psychic Gym. And he had told us that the gym was given the name of a man that pushed a rock up a hill and then run down past it to get exercise and to work his feet, and that the gym was named after these gentlemen. So, having those stories and hearing them is really useful, and how we can facilitate more of that history of the community. And so to summarize all of that survey data, we collected 35 youth data from those aged 12 to 24 years old, varying from 40% female and just under 50% as male. Walking being the top activity they enjoy doing, but difficulty breathing and breathlessness being a top issue among our youth. When we asked what they wanted to learn, we found to see that baseball was the top chosen response. And no surprise, given that walking was their favorite, we see that treadmill and a tackle track are top infrastructure and equipment preferred. And as we saw on the last slide, over 80% being interested in learning about the history of physical activity in their community. And so now that concludes the survey phase of the project. Now, where do we go from here? Well, if we revisit this diagram for earlier, we can see that following the survey phase, we will progress to an interview and focus phase, photo phase, followed by the focus phase. And so we plan to sit down individually with community members to really get a deeper understanding of their physical activity experience, specifically those individuals with chronic disease conditions. And we'll be partnering with CHR and other key members of the community to really identify these individuals. And so prior to this, we met with CSFS and we were creating a question guide that was based on the survey data. And all this can be seen here on the right of some of the questions I'm trying to ask on this interview phase. So the first question, similar to the survey phase, is asking about current physical activity behaviors, not just of the individual, but we're hoping that they can also tell us a little bit about their family's activity level, recognizing that there may be a need for multi-generational programming. The next kind of section of the interview goes into more about walking. So as we saw, walking is really important in the community. So we're interested to hear, what are some recommendations they have about walking? Do they think Fitbits could help? Where do they think we could put that walking path of tracking community? Similar to the survey, the next question asks about barriers to physical activities. So, what are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual things that get in the way of their activity, and how can we help reduce those barriers? Based on facilitators, we want to ask about things that promote activity in community. So, what are some things that encourage activity in community? Is it the health center or the certain location that they're active in? We're just interested to hear that so that we can facilitate more of that in community as well. As we saw, history and culture being really important in the survey phase, so we're interested to hear people's recommendations about how we can implement that into a physical activity program. What are some ways we can add culture? How do they think physical activity has changed from the past? And interest in learning more about those stories. And then the final question asks about qualities that make for a good instructor. So as we saw, there's interest in group programs and scheduled instructor classes. But what are some things that make for a good teacher? What are some skills we should have? Is it communication? Is it education? What other aspects we may have that will make you a vital member of a community? And all of this, we're hoping to hear from up to 30 participants from a variety of ages, equal gender, and distribution of chronic disease symptoms. And pairing with this interview phase, we hope to implement a photo board. So now Carly, Michelle, and Stacey already went in depth into all of this, so I'll just briefly touch on it. But as we saw, photo boards is a great way to give the participants a voice and research to really hear their stories and to visually capture their experiences being active in the community. So for this phase, we're hoping to ask 4 to 6 photos from each participant about their activity. So the first being about an activity they enjoy doing. So if they're walking, where are they walking? Who are they walking with? A space that you're active in. So whether that's the local gym, whether that's out in the woods. A barrier or things that get in the way of activity. So maybe the gym is locked and they have to ensure that, or maybe their driveway is too icy and they can't leave their home today. And finally, the last picture we're hoping to see is about any that promote activity. So as I mentioned, if there are walking competitions going on in the community, is it their dog that helps facilitate and remind them to get out and go for a walk that day? And so we're just in the midst of this phase, so I don't have any data to share yet, but I wanted to share some of the photos that we've seen so far that have come out of this phase. So starting there on the left, you see a photo of our participants sharing at sunset there, and you can see it's absolutely beautiful there in the community. In the middle there, we can see a photo of the local river where another participant likes to go fishing and swimming in the summertime. And again, represents the place that she is active in. The third photo there on the left is similarly a river where another participant enjoys the access to this time in the winter time. And again, representing the space she really holds dear to her heart to be active in. And so that concludes my presentation today. Again, I wanted to thank all of those in the conference for allowing me to speak here today. Special thanks to all the members of my lab for helping me every part of this project, to all our partners at Carrier Sekani Family Services, the participants and community members, because without them, this project would not be where it is today. So thank you. And happy to answer questions. Yeah. We haven't done the focus groups quite yet, but we will do a group focus.
Well, my next question would be, I got what you can share. So, if you're working with Indigenous population, we share and be looking more focused on the population.
Daniel, for sure, yeah, no, great point, yeah. We are, as I said, just in the midst of the interview phase right now, and so that phase, the interview phase will definitely, supplement and inform the focus group and circle phase. So I mean, based on the information that we're going to get out of the interview phase, how that works, we'll definitely see how we plan to structure the focus group and circle phase, whether any as a percentage is it better for one of us format for that. Yeah, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. Hello, before we move on to the next presenter, I do want to present the last presenter with our certification and our thank you for presenting in this conference. So if we could get the presenter back up, thank you so much. So thank you for our conference and everyone participating for sharing this knowledge with us. Thank you so much. And if you are joining from the Zoom, you can now join the large debate room, sorry, the larger meeting room, and then join the breakout room as needed.